attention to this. CCTV footage, June 3rd, 4:52 p.m. A white service van pulls into the driveway of a farmhouse in rural Marlow County, Texas. A man steps out, blue uniform. His name is Terrence Gaines. He is 32 years old, father of 2. 6 years with the same cable company. This is his last service call of the day. He walks toward the house. A white male, mid-50s, is waiting at the door. They greet each other and go inside. The door closes behind them. That is the last time anyone sees Terrence Gaines alive. What you are looking at is 12 seconds of footage from the homeowner's own security camera. The camera he forgot to turn off. 12 seconds that would later become the only evidence that Terrence ever arrived at that address. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you what happened after that door closed. The question is not what happened to Terrence. The question is, how long had this man been waiting for a black technician to show up at his door? And when you see what investigators found in that basement 3 weeks later, you will understand why this case is still discussed in FBI training sessions on domestic terrorism. Here is what everyone assumed at first. Terrence Gaines, experienced technician, makes a routine service call, enters customer's home. Something goes wrong. Maybe an accident. Maybe he saw something he should not have. Maybe the homeowner panicked. Random. Isolated. The kind of tragedy that happens in rural America where help is far away and people are on their own. That is what local sheriff believed for the first 48 hours. That is what the news reported. That is what everyone assumed. Wrong. This was not random. This was not an accident. And it had nothing to do with what Terrence saw or did not see. Because the man who opened that door, the man with the smile, the man who shook Terrence's hand like they were old friends, had been planning this moment for 11 months. His name was Earl Hutchins, 54 years old, widower, retired plant supervisor, lived alone on 40 acres of farmland that had been in his family for 3 generations. To the people in town, he was quiet, kept to himself, came into the hardware store once a month, nodded at the cashiers, paid in cash. The kind of man who blended into the background of a small town where everyone knows everyone, but nobody really knows anyone. The kind of man who had a flag on his porch and a Bible verse on his mailbox. The kind of man who shook a stranger's hand and said 3 words that ended a life. Come on in. Let me tell you about Terrence first, because he deserves that. He deserves to be more than a case file number. Terrence grew up in Houston, 3rd Ward, raised by his grandmother after his mother passed when he was 6, worked his way through trade school while holding down a night job at a warehouse. At 24, he married his girlfriend Keisha. At 25, they had their first child, Jaden. At 28, their daughter, Nia. When Terrence got the cable technician job, he told Keisha this was the one. Steady hours, good benefits, company van. He could be home for dinner every night, watch his kids grow up. That was the plan. 6 years he worked that job. 6 years of crawling through attics and basements. 6 years of being invited into strangers' homes. Thousands of service calls. Terrence had a rule. Always be professional. Always be polite. Yes, sir. No, sir. Thank you, sir. He told Keisha once that being a black man in white people's houses meant you had to be twice as careful. Never give them a reason to complain. Never give them a reason to be afraid. 6 years of following that rule. And on June 3rd at 4:52 p.m., that rule got him killed. Now let me tell you about Earl Hutchins. But not everything. Not yet. Because what you need to understand first is how someone like Earl becomes invisible. He had lived in that farmhouse for 31 years, inherited it from his father. His wife died of cancer in 2019, no children. After she passed, Earl stopped coming into town as often. People assumed he was grieving. People assumed he wanted to be alone. People assumed a lot of things about Earl Hutchins that turned out to be wrong. What nobody knew was that after his wife died, something changed in Earl. Or maybe something that was always there finally had room to grow. He started spending 14 hours a day on his computer, not looking at the news, not watching videos, talking. to people who thought like him, people who believed what he believed, people who used words like replacement and invasion and war. Earl had believed these things for decades, quietly, privately, but now he had found others, thousands of others, and they were not content to just believe anymore. They wanted to act. Remember this. Earl's internet service had been installed by a black technician 4 years earlier. Earl had smiled at that man too, shook his hand, offered him sweet tea, watched him work for 2 hours, and then let him leave. Because Earl was not ready yet. He was. Still learning, still planning, still waiting for the right moment. The moment when he would not be alone. The footage from Earl's own security camera shows what happened. Terrence's van pulls in. He gets out and walks toward the house. Earl is waiting at the door. They greet each other and go inside. The door closes. That footage would later become the only evidence that Terrence ever arrived at that address. Here is what the camera did not capture. Earl's kitchen. A glass of sweet tea already poured, sitting on the counter, condensation running down the side. Waiting. Terrence would later be found with traces of a veterinary sedative in his system. The same sedative used to tranquilize large animals. Cattle, horses, the kind of sedative a retired plant supervisor with 40 acres of farmland would have easy access to. The kind that takes effect in 8 to 12 minutes depending on body weight. Earl knew this because he had tested it. Not on a person, not yet, but he had done his research. 11 months of research. He knew the dosage, he knew the timing. He knew exactly how long he had before Terrence would start feeling dizzy. Long enough to walk him to the basement, long enough to get him down the stairs, long enough to close the door. Terrence never made it to his next destination, home. Keisha expected him at 6:30 p.m. By 7 p.m. she was texting. By 7:30 she was calling. By 8 p.m. she called the company. They checked GPS. Terrence's van was still at the Hutchins property. Dispatch called Earl's number, the number on file from when he scheduled the service call. No answer. They called again. No answer. At 9 p.m. they called the sheriff. Deputy showed up at 9:47 p.m., knocked on the door. Earl answered. Calm, polite. Said the technician had finished the job around 5:30 and left. Must have forgotten his van. Maybe got a ride with someone. Maybe had car trouble and caught a lift. Deputy looked at the van, looked at Earl, looked at the dark farmhouse behind him, asked if he could come in and look around. Earl smiled, said he would need to see a warrant for that. Deputy did not have a warrant. Deputy had no probable cause. Deputy had a missing van and a cooperative homeowner with a reasonable explanation. Deputy left, filed a report. Terrence Gaines officially became a missing person at 11 p.m. on June 3rd. His body would not be found for 19 days. 3 days passed. Keisha called the sheriff every morning, every afternoon, every evening. The van was still at Earl's property. Earl had called the cable company to complain about it, said it was an eyesore, said he wanted it removed. The company sent someone to pick it up, standard procedure for abandoned vehicles. They did not check inside. They did not dust for prints. They drove it back to the depot and parked it in the lot. Evidence contaminated. Chain of custody broken. Nobody thought to treat it as a crime scene because nobody believed a crime had occurred. Missing black man in rural Texas. Probably ran off. Probably had another family somewhere. Probably did not want to be found. Keisha heard these theories. From deputies. From neighbors. From people at her church. She did not believe any of them. Terrence would never leave his children. Terrence called home 3 times a day even when he was working. Terrence had left that morning with a smile and a promise to practice catching with Jaden. Something was wrong. She knew it. But nobody would listen. On day 7, Keisha drove to the Hutchins property herself, parked at the end of the driveway, did not get out, just sat there, watching. Earl came out on the porch, stood there, looking at her, for 11 minutes. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. Then Keisha drove away. She told investigators later that something in Earl's eyes made her afraid. Not angry afraid, deep afraid. The kind of afraid that comes from recognizing something inhuman looking back at you. She filed a complaint with the sheriff, said she believed Earl Hutchins had done something to her husband. Deputy visited Earl again. Earl was cooperative, offered coffee, showed the deputy around the ground floor. Nothing suspicious. Just a lonely widower in a big, empty farmhouse. Deputy left. Told Keisha there was nothing more they could do without evidence. The break came on day 16. Not from the sheriff. Not from the FBI. From a journalist, Carla Reeves, investigative reporter from Houston. She had been working on a story about missing persons cases in rural Texas. Specifically, missing black men. Specifically, cases that were closed quickly or never investigated properly. Terrence's case caught her attention. She started digging. She found something the sheriff had missed. Earl Hutchins had requested the service call specifically, had asked for an afternoon appointment, had asked for a technician who could handle complex wiring issues. The company's system showed that 3 technicians were available that day, 2 white, 1 black. Earl's service request was assigned to Terrence. Random assignment according to the company. But Carla kept digging. She found 4 other service requests from Earl's address over the past 11 months. Each one assigned to a different technician. Each one canceled at the last minute. Each one had been assigned to a white technician. The only appointment Earl kept was the one with Terrence. Carla published her story on day 17. By day 18, the FBI was involved. Not because of local pressure, because Earl Hutchins' name appeared in a federal database. A database of individuals connected to domestic extremist organizations. Earl had been flagged 2 years earlier based on his online activity. Flagged, but not investigated. Flagged, but not interviewed. Flagged, but not watched. One of 47,000 names in that database. Not enough resources to monitor them all. Not enough agents to knock on every door. Earl had slipped through the cracks, the way so many of them do, until someone disappears. On day 19, FBI agents obtained a warrant. They arrived at Earl's property at 6 a.m. Earl was sitting on his porch, coffee in hand, waiting, like he knew they were coming. He did not resist. He did not run. He smiled. The same smile from the CCTV footage. The same smile he gave Terrence before he closed the door. Agents searched the house. They found the basement. They found what was in the basement. And they found Terrence. I cannot describe everything investigators found in that basement. What I can tell you is this. Earl had not acted alone. On the night of June 3rd, 2 other men had come to that farmhouse. Cell tower records proved it. DNA evidence confirmed it. 3 men, 3 believers, 3 participants in what Earl later described as a cleansing. The 2 other men were arrested within 72 hours. Curtis Adler, 41, electrician from Waco, member of the same online forums as Earl, had driven 4 hours to be there that night. Roy Beckman, 38, unemployed, former military, dishonorable discharge, had been communicating with Earl for 14 months, planning, preparing, waiting for Earl to find the right target. They had done this before, not together, but the investigation revealed that all 3 had connections to unsolved cases. Curtis was linked to a missing landscaper in 2021, Roy to a missing delivery driver in 2022. Different states, different jurisdictions, different investigations that never talked to each other. Until now. The trial lasted 4 weeks. All 3 men were convicted. Earl received the death penalty. Curtis received life without parole. Roy received life without parole. The prosecutor called it one of the most disturbing hate crimes in Texas history. The FBI director issued a statement about the threat of domestic terrorism. Politicians made speeches. News anchors looked somber. And then, everyone moved on. Because there is always another tragedy, always another headline, always another family destroyed by hatred. But Keisha did not move on. She could not move on. She gave one interview after the sentencing. Just one. She said Terrence had called her at 4:30 p.m. on June 3rd, 22 minutes before he arrived at Earl's house. He said he was tired, said this was his last call of the day, said he would be home soon, said he loved her, said, "Tell the kids Daddy is bringing ice cream." Those were his last words to her. Tell the kids Daddy is bringing ice cream. Jaden is 9 now. He does not play Little League anymore. He does not like baseball anymore. He does not like anything his father liked, because everything reminds him of what he lost. Nia is 6. She was too young to remember Terrence clearly. She knows him from photographs, from videos, from stories her mother tells. She asks sometimes why Daddy had to go to that man's house. Keisha does not know how to answer. How do you explain to a child that her father was killed because of the color of his skin? How do you explain that there are people in this world who hate without reason and kill without remorse? How do you explain that the same smile that welcomes you can also be the last thing you see? Here is what the cable company changed after Terrence's case. Technicians now work in pairs in rural areas. GPS tracking is monitored in real time. Any service call exceeding 90 minutes triggers automatic check-in. Background checks are run on customers in flagged zip codes. These are good changes. They might save lives. But here is what they cannot change. Earl Hutchins spent 11 months planning. He studied dispatch patterns. He learned how assignments were made. He canceled 4 appointments until he got the technician he wanted. He was patient. He was methodical. He was invisible. No company protocol can protect against someone who believes that killing you is a righteous act. No background check can identify someone who has never been caught. No GPS tracker can save you once that door closes behind you. The FBI investigation expanded. After the trial, they found the online forums where Earl and Curtis and Roy had met. Thousands of members, hundreds of active posters, dozens who had discussed similar plans. The forums were shut down. The members scattered. They found new platforms, new ways to communicate, new ways to plan. 6 months after Terrence's death, the FBI identified 3 additional plots in various stages of development, all targeting service workers, all targeting black men. All stopped before they could be carried out. But how many were not stopped? How many are being planned right now? How many men like Earl are sitting in farmhouses across America, waiting for a van to pull into their driveway? Terrence's route number was retired. No other technician will ever make service calls in that sequence again. His locker at the company depot has been turned into a memorial. Photos of him with his family. Cards from co-workers who remembered his laugh, his professionalism, his kindness. The break room has a plaque now. In memory of Terrence Gaines, dedicated employee, loving father, taken too soon. Keisha visits sometimes, stands in front of that plaque, tries to feel something other than rage. This is what happened to Terrence Gaines. This is what 12 seconds of CCTV captured. This is what a handshake and a smile from a stranger cost a family. If you have ever invited a service worker into your home, think about what that trust means to them. They are entering a stranger's space. They are vulnerable. They are hoping you are who you appear to be. Most of the time you are. Most people are good. But it only takes one who is not. One smile, one handshake, one door closing behind you. And then 6 hours in a basement with men who believe you are less than human because of the color of your skin. Share this video. Tell people about Terrence. Because awareness is the only thing that might make someone hesitate, might make a company think twice, might make a family demand better protection. Terrence deserved to come home that night. He deserved to practice catching with Jaden. He deserved to watch his daughter grow up. He deserved to grow old with Keisha. He deserved a life. And 3 men who never knew him took all of that away because they could. Because nobody stopped them. because nobody was watching. If you work a job that takes you into strangers' homes, listen to your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if a man you have never met smiles too wide and shakes your hand too firm and offers you something to drink, remember Terrence. Remember the sweet tea. Remember the 12 seconds of footage. Remember that the most dangerous monsters do not look like monsters at all. They look like neighbors. They look like customers. They look like the kind of man who waves from his porch and goes to church on Sunday. And they are waiting, right now, somewhere in America, for someone just like you to ring their doorbell.